The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
Welcome to this week's episode of Work the Left Side. I am joined by Ryan Palmer and the head of table, the big boss, the honcho, John Scott. It's a spotlight episode, so we are looking at the career of Big Van Vader, or the man they call Vader. It's a good episode, man. It's one of those. I think it's the most positive spotlight episode we've done. I think every match was a banger. You know, there's no negative matches in there. No, we've watched them, so you don't have to scenarios as normal. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. It was a really fun episode to record, and that was it really. So enjoy. As always, if you're on YouTube, like, share, and leave us a comment as well. Let us know what you think. So. Awesome, and we will see you all soon.
All right, welcome to Work the Left Side. This is another spotlight episode. That means I am joined, as always, by the co-host with the most, Mr. Ryan Palmer. And I am joined this week by our head of the table, the head honcho, the big boss, Mr. John Scott.
Hey Nick, hey Ryan, thanks for having me on your show. Love the show, big fan, and can't wait to talk about this week's Spotlight episode. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah. Oh man, full credit where it's due. This was your shout. You recommended a Vader one. It piqued my interest. So yeah, why not? Because obviously the point of these Spotlight episodes are, we go through the good and the bad. And if you don't know much about the person, hopefully these are a gateway into checking out some of the matches, expanding your horizons and knowledge of people. And if there's people out there who only watch WWE, then Vader may be sort of tainted a person. He didn't have the best of runs in WWE in comparison to what came beforehand, I would say. We just talked about it beforehand, John. He's always in the main event. He was always kind of up there until close to the end, but they never utilised him.
Yeah. And regarding Vader, I mean, he was one of my favourite wrestlers of all time, to be fair. Certainly my favourite big man wrestler of all time. And I was surprised to see, kind of getting ready for today's show, that he had a 20-year career, 22 years in the business. And I know there was, kind of years where he was a bit inactive, but for a big man, over 20-year career, that's kind of, got to give credit where credit's due. That's pretty impressive.
That's huge. What about you, Ryan? How much did you dig into? Did you go down the rabbit hole?
I didn't go down the rabbit hole of WWF because I kind of felt that his run was used to get Shawn Michaels over, and I really didn't like that version of Shawn Michaels at all. I didn't like that run at all. I remember they initially threw him in there with Ken Shamrock, and then he's had his matches with Shawn Michaels, and I thought it just brought back kind of bad memories. So it was just like I went down the WCW.
It was when he was at the peak of his arsehole.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was
politics.
Yeah.
Because there was a key moment, and I'll give it to the episode. If nobody's brought it up by the end, I'll mention it, kind of thing. But yeah, so
I think that his WWF. His WWF one just broke him as a person. So
I would say so. By the end, especially based on what I watched and heard, this thing that happened with Shawn Michaels was definitely a huge confidence dent to him. I think it's kind of a downward spiral after that. So it's just sad to see, because the dude was an icon in WCW, and he was an icon in New Japan. So right, first match. what we got? Who we're going with?
I'll start because this match that I'm starting with is I'd say probably one of the most unusual. Well, I've got two unusual matches actually. This one's unusual in the fact that I think there's about 2 pinfall attempts in this whole match, and I've never ever seen. I don't remember seeing a match where there's hardly any pinfall attempts at all in a match. It's the 1993 Starrcade match versus Ric Flair,
Oh man,
and it
Is that
is
the one in North
for
Carolina?
yes, it's
Yes.
that one.
what a classic!
It kind of there's like a beginning bit at the very beginning of the show, and it starts showing Ric Flair, his past, him growing up. There's like newspaper clippings of the airplane crash that he was in, and he broke his back, and the other wrestler that died in it. There's, I think there was some sort of commentary about the first. I could have misheard this one. The first person that he wrestled after this was Harley Race, and then he won the championship after that match.
10 years prior to that match in '83, it was.
Yep, that was it.
Yep.
And then it dissolves into Vader. Vader just destroying all these WCW wrestlers and destroying everyone in his path and on a path of rage. And I'm going to be the champion. I'm going to kill Flair. And all this. So there must have been something. Cause I then skipped forward to the match itself, and it was like, that's a bit unusual. So skipped forward onto the match, and commentaries are like, oh, this is. They start going on about Flair's career and stuff. So he must have. It must be some sort of I'll win this match, or if I don't win, my career's over. So it's like a belt versus career match. They don't say that overtly, but I think that's what the match is. And I think even just slightly prior to the match itself, there's a vignette of Flair getting ready for the match in his home. He's setting off. He's got his kids. You see a tall David Flair. You see a little Reed Flair. You see Charlotte. You see with his whichever wife it is.
Yeah, no, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Which one it is. And Mean Gene's in there, and he's trying to get a word in. He's like, I'll just leave you. It's cute, but it's hammy at the same time.
Is that the one where they have the limousine ride to the arena? Is it with Mean Gene and Flair in the back of the limo? And they did a similar thing for AEW recently, and I think it was Tony Schiavone and Cody in the back of the limo, and it was very, very similar to what Flair and Mean Gene did however many years earlier, 27 years earlier. So yeah, that was a bit of a throwback, but and that really set the scene nicely for the match as well, because it really it made you kind of invested in the person, didn't it?
Exactly. I think that's what they were going for. The emotional, heart-rending and tugging on your heartstrings kind of feel for the whole match itself. So going into this match, it's 1993, and Flair's already a 10-time champion at this point. It's like, wow, that's amazing for a start. As I say, you got Tony Schiavone and you've got Jesse the Body Ventura on commentary. They're hyping up Flair's 20-year career at this point. Again, it's fucking 1993. So kind of starts off with Vader just completely overpowering Flair at the lockup stage. He's pushing him over. They're locking up again and pushing Flair off. It's clear that Vader's working heel. Flair is working face. Flair is selling everything. He's going down. He's selling his back. He's begging off, but he's genuinely begging off. He's not doing the I'm begging off jab to the eye. Yeah, he's not doing that kind of shit. He's proper babyface Flair here. He's not the dirtiest player in the game. He's not using any underhand. No underhand tactics, apart from maybe one where he runs out the ring, he runs back in the ring, Vader chases him, and Vader slows down and says, I know what you're freaking doing. So Vader just slows down, Vader walks back in the ring to not get suckered in to maybe Flair like hitting him when he comes into the ring or not. Flair hits clotheslines after a test of strength, but Vader he's just stoic. He doesn't move at all. Yeah, there was a bit before the match as well where it kind of lends to the match itself because Vader comes to the match. He's got Harley Race with him. He leans over the top rope and he says to Jesse Ventura, "Get comfy, because I'm going to kill him slowly." And Jesse, he repeats, he says, "Oh, did you hear that, Giovanni? Did you hear what he says?" And during the match, he does that. It's a very slow, methodic match. He's working on every possible body part of Flair. He's hitting him with crossfaces. He's hitting him with his trademark punches in the corner. As I say, at this point, there's no. This is maybe like 10 minutes into the match. There's no pinfall attempts yet, by either Flair or by either Vader. Vader does his customary Flair flop after Vader just flings him into the rope, hits the ramp on the outside. Vader does hit a clothesline, a headbutt, and his usual punches, and then there is a 2 count. He hits like a sort of world's greatest slam kind of slam. Gets a two after that. That's the first of 2 or 3, I think it is. 2 or 3 pinfall attempts. Vader hits a middle rope splash. There is, I think in this, it's this match. Fucking Ric Flair, when he in every match that I've seen Ric Flair go to the top rope and try a move, he hits nothing. No, in this match, he hits 4 fucking axe handles from the top rope onto Vader. It's like, what's going on? He's actually here. So I guess this is kind of a landmark moment for me, seeing Flair actually hit these moves. He tries to put a figure 4 leg lock onto Vader. Vader's just too strong, pushes him off. Vader goes for the Vader bomb, misses the Vader bomb. Flair slaps on the figure 4 leg lock again. Vader gets to the rope this time. Then you hear 20 minutes has elapsed. 20 minutes. So it's like there's only been 1 pinfall attempt in 20 minutes. And it's like a 45-minute time limit. Vader just decides to start grounding and pounding Rick, which he's properly MMA in him. He's like fucking UFC in him. So for 1993, he's just like, wow, that's really inventive. But I tell you, I don't think I would have seen anyone else do that kind of offense at that point during the 90s. Vader goes up for a top rope moonsault, which in the previous match, which I'll talk about later on, he hits. In this one, he misses. Vader goes to the top rope for some reason. Not Vader. Harley Race goes up to the top rope. He falls off the top rope. It's Vader with the flying headbutt. The ref throws out Vader Race. Then Flair goes for like a weird kind of sort of botched but not botched roll up, and he gets to 3 count for the win and the title. And it's just all very pyros go off. Everyone's really crying and really cheering. Yeah. And Flair wins. So those are the only 2 pinfall. Those are the only 2 pinfall attempts in the whole match. It's like one of the most technical matches I've ever seen.
Like 25 minutes or something then?
Yeah, 25-minute match, 25, 30-minute match, something like that. 2 pinfall covers. one's the
Vader,
only one successful.
Vader, man, that's a long. He's not a small guy, is he? Like, credit to the dude for going 25, 30 minutes. Then
It is. I wouldn't say lumbering, but it's kind of lumbering. It's methodical. He's he's getting Flair into the corners. Bam, 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 bam. He's dragging him about. He's jaw-jacking with the crowd. He's working the crowd. The crowd are being worked by him. He's got the crowd in his freaking hand. Commentary are doing their jobs as well. He says he's going to beat Flair slowly, and that is exactly what he's doing. He's going to end Flair's career. And maybe he's heard this from Shivani above the crowd, and he even repeats it, I'm going to end his career. Harley Race is outside doing his bit as well. He's telling Vader what moves to hit. He's getting in the face of Flair, saying, you're finished, Flair, you're finished. Vader's going to kill you. Vader's going to kill you. Do the moonsault, Vader, do it. Everyone's got a part to play in this match. And it's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I'll take it you've seen this one as well, John.
It's one of my favourite matches. But I must admit at the time, I mean, Ric Flair is my favourite all-time wrestler. I'll go on the record every day of the week and say that. But I really wanted Vader to win because I was such a massive mark for Vader, for Big Van Vader, and the monster heel that he was in WCW. And I didn't want Flair to come back and take the title off of Vader, straight away. But when you think about it from a story standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and like you say, the psychology used in this match, and like you said, Ryan, with Vader jaw-jacking with the ref and jaw-jacking with the crowd, and it was just a wonderful match. But when you think about it as a real fight, you think Vader's got to win. Vader's got to win all day long. But like I say, Flair managed to overcome. But you mentioned about how it was ahead of its time for being more MMA like in certain spots, certainly in the corner when Vader had Flair nailing him into the corner. And I've read, I think it was in Ric Flair's book, he said that Vader was really, potatoing him. He was really laying him in stiff. And the only way that Flair could get him to calm down would be to potato him back and to hit him just as hard to kind of level things off and say, listen, big man, just calm down. Let's have a good match, but you don't need to lay him in that bloody heavy, for crying out loud. So yeah, an excellent match. At the time, I was upset by the outcome because I wanted Vader to win, but looking back on it, yeah, it's fantastic. And the whole story, I mean, you look at how they played that story out from the very beginning of the pay-per-view all the way through. It was that thread all the way through to the main event, and that amazing emotional finale and pinfall, and Ric Flair holding up the title and the fireworks. A really great pay-per-view. And when I think of WCW pay-per-views, I think to that kind of 92, 93, 94 era, pre-Hulk Hogan, because that was the era that I really liked. It kind of felt gritty, it felt more real, it felt kind of more authentic wrestling for me. But I've got to say also, I think that Flair versus the Vader match, that was Vader's, I want to say Vader's best ever match.
I would say so, yeah. Alluding, going back to what you said about Flair having a potato back Vader, that happened in, I don't know if he's going to mention this match at all, but there's a WWF match versus Ken Shamrock. Vader's probably laying it into Ken Shamrock. Shamrock has to say, calm down. Whack! He hits him for real, floors him, and he just sets him straight after that.
That might be one of mine. That might be one of mine.
But yeah, in all these matches, fucking Vader is probably laying him in. But the opponents in the match are professional enough to know exactly what they're going to get and how they're going to respond to it.
You know who you're working with, don't you?
They know who they're working with, yeah. And they know what the score is.
One of the I do more of the documentaries. I like going into details and find out little bits and bobs kind of thing. And obviously when he was doing his feud with Cactus Jack, obviously the ear thing is a famous thing where he but that wasn't Vader's fault. He got it caught in the rope. But one of his matches, he legitimately just busted open Foley's face, and it required like 27 stitches just from the punches. There was no blade job required. These were just from Leon's just pummeling, freaking Mick's head, and he just busted him open, that bad. It's just like, oh, jeez. So yeah, the dude, he wasn't forwards and going backwards with just attacking people kind of thing.
I
Yeah,
think that's one of my matches.
Many wrestlers have gone on the record to say that Leon was a little bit stiff and they didn't like working with him. Certainly, Bret Hart has gone on the record as saying that he didn't like getting in the ring with him because he just wasn't cooperative, shall we say, or maybe a little bit stiff on occasions.
But again, it is so people like to work that way. Other people sort of don't. That's the thing. And like we've always just said, who you're in the ring with. You work to their requirements kind of thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
So John, what you got? What match we got?
Well, Ryan alluded to it just a moment ago. I'm going to kick it off with Ken Shamrock and Vader, and kind of this brought back so many memories when I watched this earlier on this afternoon. And if you think about the kind of timeline of it all as well, this was the very next pay-per-view after WrestleMania 13, where we had that classic Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin match. Possibly the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. Shamrock was brought in, obviously just been signed by the WWF at the time as the special referee, the enforcer, whatever they described it as at the time. But thinking back to that match in particular, Shamrock played his part brilliantly. He really was a fantastic enforcer. He really kind of got into the psychology of the match without overstepping his boundaries too much until kind of he needed to. But then the very next month, and that would have been May 1997, Ken Shamrock made his in-ring debut in Your House, Cold Day in Hell, I believe it was called. And who better to put him in with than Vader? And this was billed as the only way you can win would be by a knockout, referee stoppage, or submission. No pinfalls in this one, which kind of made it more down kind of Ken Shamrock's alley, really. Kind of more that they were trying to give off the MMA vibe because of Shamrock, of course, and they were kind of heavily promoting one of the early UFC pay-per-views during that era as well. The reason why I've chosen this one, and the reason why a lot of people go back to this match in particular, is because it really did feel quite real, to be honest with you. I don't think Ken Shamrock ever had kind of a soft sports entertainment match in his entire life. He really did carry over that kind of combat sports, that MMA world into the pro wrestling world, which kind of gave him legitimacy, to be honest with you. And then putting him in there with Vader. Now, Vader was already well over a year into his WWF run, so we'd already had the whole kind of Shawn Michaels SummerSlam from the year before, but they knew that putting Vader in there with him would kind of give him some stiff competition, and that's exactly what we got. And we alluded to it earlier. There were stiff punches, there were stiff blows, there were really quite wincing suplexes as well, to be honest with you. They did, and Ken Shamrock in particular did kind of experiment with submission holds throughout the match. So it was a really kind of varied match. I think the match only went about maybe 15 minutes maximum, but it was really, really tough. And there was a couple of spots. I think Vader in particular, he leveled Ken Shamrock with an awesome clothesline that really kind of took Ken Shamrock out of his boots in the middle of the ring. And shortly after, Vader kind of almost had enough of Ken Shamrock laying it in, and he just threw him over the top rope. Landed quite awkwardly on the outside, which once again kind of took Shamrock out of his game a little bit. But they were laying it in pretty thick. They weren't kind of leveling off at all. There weren't no easing off. The punches seemed pretty legit, and you did see some welts kind of building up. And I think there's a famous story and I think they mentioned this on commentary and certainly in the reports afterwards, that Shamrock broke Vader's nose in 5 places. And you could see kind of he was adjusting his mask. He felt very uncomfortable. His nose was bleeding towards the end, but he carried on, and the match was really, really stiff. And I'm pretty sure that Ken Shamrock obviously won his debut, and I think it was via a submission hold. It was like an ankle hook or something like that. So I know that he was very keen on his kind of leg holds and his ankle hooks.
Knee
but
bar. Was it
a knee bar? Yeah,
yeah.
Hell of a match, and it's one that I always kind of go back to because you got 2 kind of intense wrestlers that don't mind laying it in. Vader, I think he enjoyed the hell out of it, to be honest with you. It had enough of the whole kind of sports entertainment vibe and thought, let's have a kind of a proper match. And yeah, it did have that MMA vibe. It did have that UFC vibe. And it was a great introduction to Ken Shamrock, certainly one of his best matches or more memorable matches. But I know that not many people, when they think of Vader, go to his WWF days, but I think that could be considered one of, if not his best WWF match, purely for what it was. It was a really competitive, hard-hitting, enjoyable match, and was probably, getting probably the match of the night, to be honest with you, in terms of what they delivered. But yeah, that's my first pick anyway.
That's a very solid shout because, like I said, it fits. It fits both people so well. You got people complaining about Vader, working stiff. Throw him in there with a guy who's just coming from the UFC.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of like
Shamrock didn't mind. That's the way he likes it.
Yeah, exactly. So it goes on both guys. It works so well for both of them. Ryan, obviously you mentioned this match earlier, so I take it you've watched this one as well, or you know of it. You've watched
I know of it. Yeah, I've seen the slap that Shamrock gives Vader. Just ease up, and he's just like, yes, yeah. Or is it the other way around? Somebody gets a freaking slap. Yeah, I'm
it's reminiscent of Rock and Braun, isn't it? Because obviously, there's that story
exactly.
recently of to do it to Braun. Braun was getting too excited, and Brock was just like that. No, my bad. Just like just whack him on the nose and say firmly. But yeah, I think both guys. I think Shamrock's another one of those guys. Just a sidebar, who people kind of don't acknowledge or appreciate his run in WWE. I think especially the first year and a half, he was on fire, man. It was so over. I recently went back and we watched all of the 90s pay-per-views. And yeah, Shamrock was just on fire. He was one of the top baby faces for a good 12, 18 months.
And just on that, and I know we're here to talk about Vader, but I mean, looking back on Ken Shamrock's WWF run, and you mentioned there how well he did in his first year or so, and he's involved in some good storylines, and he always brought that intensity, that realism, and that obviously came from his combat background. But he had a great look, a great physique. He had some really, really good moves. You would think that he would be kind of the archetypal person that Vince McMahon would want on top as a possible champion, and he didn't really get that opportunity. He did with the IC belt. I think he was the IC champ, maybe on a couple of occasions. Pardon me?
Too short.
Well, do you think so? Well, in the modern era, that would be a yes all day. But back then, you would have thought that with his just the way he looked, and his intensity, and he was a natural as well. I mean, you think of Ronda Rousey, Kurt Angle coming into the business, absolute naturals, and Ken Shamrock, was a natural as well because he had that kind of sporting, that combat background, and I thought for a debut that was pretty damn good, and he did put in some good outings, but he was never quite given that top spot. And like I say, we're here to talk about Vader, but Ken Shamrock is another interesting character, and still, still giving it today, still putting in all the efforts for Impact and other promotions today, and still looks absolutely fantastic. He's probably in his 50s now, delivering some fantastic matches. Yeah, so all credit to him.
Well, talking of badassery though, little Vader story based on his match with Stan Hansen. This is just to simplify, or not simplify, just to state how hardcore and manly Vader was. Obviously, if you know your stuff, Hansen came down with like this metal bull rope. And before the match even started, he literally just clonked Vader on the face with it. I think possibly by mistake, but straight away bust open Vader's nose. So he goes into the match with a broken nose, and then halfway through the match, he punches him, and Vader's eye just pops out of its socket. And you sort of see Vader has to take his mask off, and he's like that, pops it back in again, puts his mask back on, and then finishes the match.
Hard as nails.
Absolutely just a machine. So yeah, there's a little tidbit for you.
I think he broke his orbital bone as well, didn't he? So that's kind of part of the reason why the eyeball popped out so much. And it took Vader a long time to recover from that.
He had to have a metal plate there after the match,
Yeah.
you have to go in for surgery and have a metal plate, and it's just like absolutely unreal, man. It's just absolute craziness.
That's
So
hardcore. That's pretty hardcore.
that is. So, Mr. Palmer, what have you got?
Well, I think you alluded. Everyone's alluding to everything at the moment.
Allude is the word of the night, isn't it?
Just take a drink if you ever want to lose. It's
Not yet. I've got ready though for when if the match does come up.
I'm fairly sure this is the match where Mick Foley gets busted open to the extent 3 punches, unless I have all the stitches. This is versus Cactus Jack, Halloween Havoc, 1993. The champion at the time was Vader, but for some reason this is a non-title match. There's some sort of backstory about I think Vader had given Cactus Jack a concussion a few matches before. Then Jack got lost his memory. Lost his memory, got his memory back, lost it again, or something weird. I think I vaguely at the time remember something like that, and this kind of sort of jogged my memory, and I was just like, yeah.
They did a whole series of like vignettes finding Cactus Jack, and the reporter every week would go out and try to find Cactus Jack, and they found Cactus on the streets living rough. And they would kind of go back to him every single week for about 4 or 5 weeks. It was a fantastic little kind of thing that played out until he eventually got his memory back, and then that's what kind of brought him into the match. But so sorry for interrupting, but I remember that kind of so well, and it was such a neat little storyline, and it was kind of out there, completely out there, but it made sense because he got the concussion from his previous match with Vader, of course, from being power bombed onto the concrete. So yeah, finding Cactus Jack is probably out there on YouTube or maybe on the network. But every week it was like a little mini drama for about 4 or 5 weeks. It's classic.
Shit like that. That's 90s wrestling.
Yeah,
absolutely. Also, this is a spin the wheel, make the deal match. So earlier during the night, Vader and Harley Race spun the wheel, and it spun and it spun and it spun very slowly, and it still spun and didn't stop until it actually stopped. It spun so slowly, so it landed on Texas Deathmatch. The pointer was like a knife. Texas Deathmatch, I think it was slightly different to the Texas Deathmatch that was on AEW the night before yesterday. In this one, no DQ, falls count anywhere. There's a 30-second rest between the falls, and the match ends when you can't. One of the guys can't answer a 10 count, and pinfalls don't count. So you can don't count for the win. You can pin. You can pin
they
someone.
Start the 10 count. You get the pinfall, and then they start the 10 count.
Nope.
Is that right?
You get the pinfall. They start a 30-second count for the rest. Then, they do the 10 count.
very bizarre.
So, yeah, you've got Harley Race coming to the ring with Vader again. Jack he just sprints to the ring. Immediately, they fight on the entrance ramp, the big built-up ramp. Cactus Jack doesn't have his Truth or Consequences music, the funeral march music, for some reason. It must be a network edit. It's really weird, funky music, just doesn't fit with him. So that's not his music, surely. So they're both fighting on the ramp. Tony Schiavone recounts the memory loss, finding Cactus Jack angle from the few weeks before. They're fighting all over the place. They're fighting outside of the ring. Cactus Jack bites Vader. Jack goes into the crowd because they're fighting on the guardrail. Cactus Jack goes into the crowd, reaches into the crowd, picks out something. Turns out to be a fan's camera. Hits Vader in the head. Gives it back to the fan. And the fans just there. So what the fuck just happened? He gets a chair, hits Vader square in the head with a chair shot. He's just like, eee. Back in the ring, Vader hits really stiff clothesline onto Cactus Jack, and then his usual punches, square punches in the face. Then you got Vader suplexing, Vader being suplexed to the outside ramp. He hits his head on the ramp as well. At this point, Cactus Jackson just busted open. It must be again just from the fucking punches, but you don't see you don't see that, you don't see the actual impact. It just suddenly just starts trickling blood. Got Harley Race trying to hit Cactus Jack with a chair on the ramp. Jack hits Vader with the chair instead. Then, because it's Halloween Havoc, the entrance ramp is a graveyard, and you got tombstones. You got Elvis lives on a tombstone. Something else. R.I.P. Vader. I think R.I.P. Jack as well. They end up inside one of the inside the grave, which is just like a gully underneath the ramp. The ref just says, "No, I'm not following you under there." He physically said, actually audibly says, "No, I'm not following you under there." And Jack just like, "Come on, count." So Jack comes out, and he's got even more blood on him. Vader then comes out. Vader's busted open, so maybe he bladed underneath the fucking ring. Vader gets pinned by Cactus Jack after another chair shot. Then you got the 30-second rest, and the countdown begins. They're just milling about, and then it's the 10 count begins. Ref's given the 10 count. Vader gets up. Cactus has like a wooden cactus plant. Hits Vader with that. They go off the ramp. There's a table which is set up, but it's not like a weapon. It's just there randomly. Vader's on the table. He suddenly perks up like he's been given an adrenaline shot. He starts punching and scrapping with Cactus Jack. They go to the ring. There's another table that's set up, but it's set up in the wrong way with the legs pointing outwards. So they go to the opposite side of the ring. The ref starts to fuck around with the table to right it around, but instead of putting it in the corner, he twists it around so it's on the ropes. So Harley Race has to come into the ring. He starts squaring off with the ref, telling him he's fucked up. And then he goes to the, you see Cactus and Vader talking to each other. They're about to like do the move where Cactus is whipped into the table, which would have been stood up in the corner. But they adjust somehow. And Vader's whipped into the table still, but it would have been more impactful if it was in the corner itself. The table is then used as, because it doesn't break, used as a weapon. Hits Vader. Jack hits Vader in the head with the table. There's a spot where Vader's hanging onto the ropes on the outside. Jack does a sunset flip, trying to pull Vader down onto the floor, but it's the one where he jumps over. He grabs the he just lands square flat on the floor. And he takes a lot of the brunt. Vader's still hanging onto the ropes. He doesn't move. He then lets go of the ropes, tries to like sit down onto Jack. Jack moves, and Vader just hits the floor, splatters. Oh. So they start fighting outside the ring. They did more chair shots. Harley Race is seen with a taser. And he hires the taser. He's just like, "Get away from me, cameraman! Get away from me!" Vader actually hits the moonsault, gets a 3 count, but then it's the rest period, and then the count. Jack gets up from the count. Jack gets on the back of Vader on the entrance ramp. I don't know where they're going, but eventually Vader just goes backwards and bam, so they both splat on the deck. Jack gets hit with a chair shot. Harley Race says DDT. Then Vader hits Jack with a DDT onto the chair. Then because he's been DDT'd on the chair, loads of medical staff and randomers just come out and start checking on Jack. So they're just like, oh, what's going on? Catch Jack. Can he continue? Can he continue? And even commentary are like selling it as real. Then Jack gets pinned. Vader catches Jack for the 3. Gets the rest period. Jack DDT's Vader on the chair. Gets the rest period and then the count. They're both on the deck, but they're both getting up to one knee. They're all both groggy. I think Vader actually gets up, so the rest starts to continue to count for Jack. Harley Race, in the meanwhile, gets his taser, shocks Cactus Jack. Cactus Jack gets electrocuted, falls back down, doesn't get up for the 10. Vader wins. Vader wins because Cactus Jack got electrocuted. So after he wins, Cactus Jack gets Vader, gets Harley Race even, and DDTs him. End of pay-per-view. So crazy match.
Yeah. I love that match, but I didn't like the way it ended. I didn't like I didn't think the taser was necessary. Not with those two, but
No.
especially with the build-up and with the feud and the storyline. Just in my opinion, I felt that kind of tarnished the quality of the match, just that final bit. But hey, that's just one person's opinion.
No, that's been echoed. I've obviously heard about this match. Watched the stuff earlier, and that seems to be quite an ongoing sentiment from people that have watched this match or talked about this match. And it seemed to be like it's an amazing match. Fair play, both guys absolutely nailed it. But yeah, the ending was a bit shady. But it's like it's such a good match that you let it go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But again, man, it just sounds like another Vader match where like a shitload of stuff happens. I know they were getting like the rest periods occasionally, but again, it still feels like a very action-packed match for a big man.
Oh, absolutely. For both of them as well. It was always going to be like a plunder match for the likes of Cactus Jack. He's known for that kind of deal. Yeah. But Vader himself, he didn't look out of place. He kept going. He didn't blow up at all. He led a lot of the match as well. It didn't look like he was out of his depth in any way. So
yeah. And also, I mean, I think that Cactus Jack could be considered Vader's possibly greatest foe. I think they had so many great matches around that kind of 92, 93 period. Classic matches. I don't think those two had a bad match, to be honest with you. And quite a few of their matches was on their syndicated TV show as well. I think that was maybe 1 or 2 pay-per-view shows, matches. Certainly Halloween Havoc, the one that you just mentioned there, Ryan. He's top of the tree, top of the pile, but a lot of their matches were on kind of syndicated TV or Saturday night or whatever they had.
Saturday night, wasn't
it? Yeah. But those two never really had a bad match, and some might consider Sting Vader's greatest ever foe. But personally, my kind of I've got to say Cactus Jack is probably his greatest ever opponent.
I don't think there's a wrong answer between the two of them. I think you can go either. I think there's a good argument for either, and I wouldn't disagree with somebody if they said either one of them, kind of thing. I think because obviously Sting, Surfer Sting at the time, those two guys were tearing it up, 92, 93 as well. So I have one match which I will mention. I found it. I was lucky enough because I know Ryan couldn't find any when he looked. I was lucky enough to find this on YouTube. It's a New Japan match where it is Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow versus the Steiner Brothers.
Oh, right.
It was, I'll say, 92, circa 90, well, between 90 and 91, actually, I think it was. And dude, I mean, obviously we did the Steiner Brothers episode a few weeks ago. This is the kind of matches we should have been watching, you know, for the Steiner episode. This match was just unreal. The rings always. I'm not that up on New Japan. I'll hold my hands up. I've very rarely watched it. Not because I don't like it. It's just access. I generally don't have access to watching it, kind of thing. So I haven't seen that much of it. But the ring looks huge. I don't know if that's normal in New Japan. If the rings were a bit bigger over there, or if it's just the way it's shot. But the ring, I
Should
mean,
be the way it's shot.
we got 4 big guys. I mean, and it starts off with Vader and Bam Bam running the ropes, like intersecting like that, and they do that for a good couple of minutes. And you're just like, Jesus, man. You know, for 2 big guys, the cardio is unreal. And Rick and Scott are just stood there looking at them like, these 2 guys are fucking mental. But if you get a chance to watch it, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's one of those matches. It is on YouTube. Find it, and it's just the Steiners being the Steiners, and Bam Bam and Vader were IGW or IWGP tag titles holders at the time. They went to it as champs. Yeah, man, it's just an awesome match. Obviously, the fans are lapping it up. Scotty Boy hits a Frankensteiner on Vader. It just it's awesome. It's probably one of my favourite matches I've watched for a while, actually. And it just totally took me by surprise.
Cool. I'll have to have a look for that with myself.
Yeah, definitely. It's on there on YouTube. It could be this episode's hidden gem, I would sort of say. But yeah, obviously that's where we made his name in New Japan. That's where Vader began the legacy. Again, I don't know how much you two have looked into it and stuff, but did you hear about the riot that he freaking caused in '87?
No, tell us.
Oh man, well, it was his debut. He turned up and challenged. I'm going to mispronounce his name. Inoki.
Yeah.
Inoki. Yeah.
Inoki.
That's the dude. He just had a match. Come off the back of that, they were in the sumo hall. So big arena, New Japan sumo hall. Inoki just had a match. Vader turns up and challenges him. So him being the face, he accepts the challenge. And Vader just annihilates him in like 2 minutes and beats him. And the fans go ballistic. We're not talking, you know, just like throwing beer cans. They pulled up seats. They set fires. They nearly burnt the fucking place down on the back of this. The fans were just that, you know, emotional and tied into it. And New Japan were actually banned for 2 years after that from going back to the sumo hall. So just like, nah, we don't want you here. This ain't happening again. But that was Vader's first impression in Japan.
You just off the back of that, because obviously it was New Japan, I think, that first came up with the creation or the character of Vader, Big Van Vader, or Super Vader. I think they called him for a time in New Japan, and obviously you had the Mastodon kind of headpiece. But originally New Japan didn't have Leon White in mind for the character, because they were toying with the idea of giving the Big Van Vader character to either Sid Vicious at the time, or Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior, before they kind of broke out on the American scene. And that was their number 1, number 2 pick. For some reason that kind of fell through, and Leon obviously was probably a few years in to the business, making his name, and obviously they saw the sight of Leon White and thought, right, you're our gimmick, you're our guy, you're our Big Van Vader. So it could very well have been so different, and that's kind of a, you know, story that's been circulating for many years. But yeah, Sid and the Ultimate Warrior were originally kind of penciled in before they made it kind of big over in the States as being Big Van Vader originally, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think Sid does talk about that on an interview I watched. He acknowledges it and admits it, and he's like, "Yeah, I could have done half the job, you know, that Leon did with that character, with those characteristics. It suited him so much more than me." So even Sid was like, "Yeah, no, you know, I would have totally fucked it up."
Yeah, definitely.
Looks out all right in the end. So, what's your second match?
Oh, this one, when I watched it back today, really kind of took me by surprise at how good it actually was. And I shouldn't be surprised considering who the competitors were in the ring. Obviously, you had Vader. It is back in his WWF days, and this was a UK pay-per-view. Now, obviously, back in the 90s, WWF used to love coming over here. They used to, I remember going to Wembley Stadium, 1992. I was there for SummerSlam, and every so often they would come back and do the odd pay-per-view. And this was 1997 one night stand, or one night only, UK pay-per-view, and it's Vader versus Owen Hart. So it was an extraordinary match. And 1997 would have been when you had the new kind of Hart Foundation stable with Davey Boy, Brett, Neidhart, Owen, and Pillman, of course. So I was trying to kind of tie the timeline together, and I kind of went into the match assuming that Owen was a heel, but then being as he was over in the UK and the Hearts are kind of huge across Europe, massive baby faces in the UK, I was thinking, well, yeah, maybe he was a baby face, but he could possibly have been a heel, and kind of, they obviously thought, well, this is UK, you're a Hart, Owen Hart, Bret Hart, your automatic baby faces over in the UK, but to see this match, to see these two go at it, you've got obviously two completely opposite characters, totally different wrestling styles. Also know that Vader is the big heel, kind of hard hitting. Owen was the kind of the fast paced, more technical wrestler in this, but it's a great match. And kind of going into it, kind of thinking, doing my research for this kind of episode, Nick, thinking, yeah, there's a lot of kind of bad press about Vader in his WWF days, but when you kind of have a look at the matches for their own individual merits and thinking, right, okay, he was there to do a job, and yes, 9 times out of 10 he lost the matches, but he put in a shift, he put in a hell of an effort with just about everything he did that I kind of certainly witnessed. And yes, being a big Vader fan, certainly from his WCW days, I wanted him to do more. And another random fact was he never won a single title during his entire WWF run, which might surprise quite a lot of people. And he had, many tag team partners and didn't win the tag team titles once. But this match against Owen Hart needs to be seen to be believed. It was fantastic. Vader did all of his usual spots, being quite hard hitting, throwing Owen around the ring. Owen being the kind of more smaller, more agile wrestler, and they kind of made it clear on commentary that Vader was probably twice the size, twice the weight of Owen Hart. I think they said Owen was about 220 pounds, Vader was about 450, so that would make sense. But it was a back and forth match. It was a really competitive match between these two, and Vader was doing all of his Vader splashes off the corner, and I think he attempted a moonsault, but to kind of demonstrate the resilience and what a kind of tough competitor Owen Hart is he kind of gave a fantastic outing for himself, and the fans were really, really into the match. This was a white hot match, to be honest with you, now I'm talking about it, I can't actually remember kind of who won. I think Vader kind of stole the win after a Vader bomb, but it was kind of one of their matches where Owen had the opportunity to win. You kind of felt that Owen was going to win because he was massively over with the crowd, and really kind of putting in his offense. For how kind of unique this match was in terms of the competitors that are in the ring, and how it wouldn't automatically be a pairing that you'd kind of come up with if you were putting a match card together, but knowing how brilliant these two were as a worker. And Ryan mentioned it earlier that and something that you don't always give Vader credit for is that he does Georgiak a lot with the fans, and he does kind of, put in a lot of effort character-wise within the ring. I think, psychology and storytelling is obviously a massive part of any wrestling match, and it's another kind of aspect of Vader's professional career that people don't necessarily give him credit for. Is not only was he capable of so much in the ring for a man of his size. But he had his kind of character down pretty much down pat, and he was great with the fans. But I think we all love Owen Hart. Owen Hart probably will go down as one of the greatest wrestlers in history. But this match against Vader over in the UK as well, which for me made it a bit more special. And that the fans, I mean, the UK fans, you know what they're like. They'll kind of eat up absolutely everything and go into overdrive. Even if it was the bushwhackers out there facing the head shrinkers, they would have kind of given it 10 stars in the Tokyo Dome. But this match in particular, I thoroughly enjoyed when I watched it back today, and I recommend it so much. Owen Hart versus Vader from, I think it was UK pay-per-view. UK one night only from 1997. A cracking,
Was that the one where
match.
Michaels beats Bulldog? For the
I can't remember.
I think it's that pay-per-view, because obviously that's the match that everybody talks about from that pay-per-view. But
was that for the European title?
Yes. Yeah, that was it.
Bulldog's sister died or something. She had cancer.
She had cancer at the time, I think, because he was fighting for her. But that was like the birth of DX as well. It was that moment. But yeah, that situation I remember kind of overshadowing this match. Because Ryan knows I'm a massive mark for Owen Hart. Huge fan. I rate him over Brett personally. But yeah, I remember this match, and it was an awesome match. Like I say, both guys put a shift in. It was just good storytelling. It was David versus Goliath. It was speed against strength. So I just think, but I would second that. I'd highly recommend it if anybody hasn't seen it.
Yeah, and I probably watched it back in the day and probably didn't think too much of it. Watching it back now, it kind of stands the test of time. Makes you realise once again how awesome Owen Hart was, because he could go in there with absolutely anybody, and this was proof of that. And it also reminded you of what a shift Vader put in every time he went into the ring. He wasn't kind of winning world titles or going up against Cactus Jack in a Texas Death Match or anything like that, headlining the pay-per-view. But here against Owen Hart, the two of them really meshed well, put on a fantastic match, and I think it's one of those that could be considered one of Vader's best matches, but probably not one of his most famous matches from his WWF run.
Ryan, what did you? Obviously, you're old school WCW guy as well. You remember watching WCW at 2:00 in the morning, early 90s. So Vader from his WCW days. What's your take on his WWF run?
Not too much, because it was during the time where I checked out completely.
You'd stopped, hadn't you? So I forgot it came after WrestleMania 9.
Don't say that word. Don't say WrestleMania.
Oh no!
Don't say it. The phone will fucking just go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened last time. We said it 3 times, and that's when Ryan just paused on screen. It's like,
there's bits and pieces of the new generation era that I know of from like podcasts and maybe going backwards, because of podcasts reviewing the era and showing bits and pieces of it. I didn't experience it at the time because of WrestleMania 9. So a huge chunk from 93 to 99 that is just not in my memory banks of a first time viewing. But I do remember Cactus Jack. I do remember Vader, Big Van Vader. I remember Surfer Sting, all from watching WCW Worldwide or NWA Power Hour or whatever it was called at 2:00 in the morning on ITV. So I more remember that. It's like seeing him, seeing his WWF run and him being called the man called Vader. It's just like, what? Call him Big Van Vader, for fuck's sake. Who's this man called Vader? I know, it's just, if it's not their creation, they're going to fucking try and retrofit it to make it their creation. It's just
But I will say this about his run, because I was the same as you, man. I dropped off after that WrestleMania until I got back into it late '98. So I missed a lot of Vader's run the first time round. It's only when I kind of did that 90s WWE pay-per-view marathon. I watched like every pay-per-view from the 90s that I witnessed Vader, and I was impressed. I was just kind of like, because as we said before, John, he never won the title, he never won any title by the sound, but it was always involved. Man, he had a feud with Taker. He pushed Taker to the limits. They had some good matches. He had the matches with Shawn Michaels.
Had matches with Stone Cold. Yeah.
He had some matches
all
with.
high
I
profile.
think he teamed up with Mankind a few times. They had a bit of a stable with Paul Bearer.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had matches against Yokozuna, who was a former Cornette person at the time, kind of thing. So yeah, I think obviously he didn't reach the heights that he reached in WCW. He wasn't like a 3-time world champion. He obviously didn't reach the heights that he got in New Japan. I still think he holds records over there for being the first Cajun to get the belts. Somebody can point me that in the comments. But
yeah, I mean, 3-time IWGP champion as well for New Japan.
Yeah.
I think he's a 2-time Triple Crown champion for All Japan as well. So, he just didn't do it in the F.
Yeah, but one of the documentaries I did watch started with, I think it was a really good line of Leon didn't need Vince to make him a legend. He already was one. And it's kind of like, yeah, okay, if you look at it that way, that he went into WWE with, and he was already, he already had a legacy by that point.
Has anyone seen that Will Ospreay match of his?
Oh, that's what I wanted to mention at some point. That's why, because I was going to say, I think British fans have kind of tated towards Vader a little bit because of the Ospreay stuff that happened a few years ago.
Ospreay Ricochet. He thought it was more like ballet dancing, didn't he?
Yeah. He said there's no need for this flippy shit or whatever, and then didn't Will have to do a job to him?
Yes, he did. Fucking hell.
Because Vader didn't want to lose to the smaller guy.
Yeah,
I think Will after the match just completely no-sold it as well. Just stood up after the 3 count and just walked up. I think that happened. So I heard. If it didn't, then
I vaguely no. I do vaguely recall.
I wouldn't blame it if he did do that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of tainted. Like I say, for a lot of English fans, I think, especially younger ones, current fans, obviously who never saw him in the ring or never went back and checked like the history of wrestling, all they know of Vader is this story. That the social media beef with Will Ospreay and him slagging off the current form of wrestling. So don't let that taint. When you go back, watch some of the early stuff. The dude is, he's we're doing an episode on him for a reason.
Absolutely.
Has anybody got any more matches?
I've got a good match. I'd say it's a good match. Again from 1993, WCW. This is versus Surfer Sting at Super Bowl 3. Super Brawl 3, I should say. This is a 4 corners leather strap match.
Oh, nice.
So not only have you got to touch the 4 corners in succession, you got to drag your opponent's lifeless body around the ring as well. And if somehow the opponent breaks your momentum, you've got to start all over again. And this is for the World Heavyweight Championship. So again, Vader is with Harley Race. I definitely don't remember Harley Race being his manager at this time, but apparently he was. Sting comes out to The Man Called Sting music. He does this. He does that. He's the man called Sting.
What a tune.
An excellent tune.
It's Sting!
The match is an unsanctioned match for some reason. It's never explained why, or if it is explained, I didn't hear the explanation as to why. But it's a 4 corners match, leather strap match, unsanctioned. Vader just comes out. It's strength versus speed. Obviously, Vader's the stronger of the two. Vader just yanks Sting twice, flinging him across the ring. Each time he pulls him, which would usually be the old lock-up spot, but instead it's just like pulling him with complete power. There's Sting gets back with a low blow with the rope, with the strap, because the strap goes underneath his legs. There's a point where Vader has to go to the top rope to do his moonsault bit or come off the top rope for some reason, but he goes outside, but he then realizes, oh shit, he can't do the move because of the strap. So if he goes off, he's going to get caught in the ropes with the strap. So he's got to come back in. He does some sort of weird tightrope walk on the middle rope, then goes to the top. But all the while he's trying to do that, Sting gets back to his senses, yanks Vader off the top rope, lands on his back. So they hype that up on commentary as that's what Vader was saying before the match. He's got to change the way he thinks about this match. The strap is an extra added element to the match. So he's got to completely change the way he plays this match. There is a point where Sting gets the upper hand. He does floor Vader. He does hit 1, 2, but he can't get to the third one. So that's like the first attempt at trying to end the match from Sting. And this is about 10 minutes into the match. Further into the match, 15, 20 minutes. Then Vader tries it. And they're just saying on commentary, this is the first time that Vader's tried to do this after he's been dominant so far. So they're just saying like, Vader just wants to maim and kill Sting. He doesn't even want to try and end the match. And it's just like, oh shit, you realise, he hasn't even gone for the corners during the whole up to that point of the whole match. He's just been beating the living crap out of Sting. He's pulling Sting into him, so like doing a Vader splash. There's Sting misses the Vader bomb as Sting knew. I think Vader misses the Vader bomb as Sting moves. Sting pulls Vader off the top rope as he tries a splash. Vader hits a superplex. Then he goes for the posts. But Sting breaks the momentum. Vader's just beating up Sting in the corner. The ref is just like fucking Nick Patrick. I hate that. Him and there's another ref I freaking hate, but Nick Patrick with his stupid ticky or shoulder with the left hand to tell you to kick out. Just like, come on, stop making it obvious. So Vader's just beating the crap out of Sting in the corner. And the ref is just like, oh, stop. Let him out. I'm just like, oh, why? He doesn't need to. So he does that quite a few times. Then it's reverse. Sting is stomping the hell out of Vader in the corner and punching him. The ref's just doing nothing. It's a really odd spot. Then from that point, Sting just powers up Vader onto his shoulders, deadlifts him, or squats him, turns around. Nick Patrick takes the lamest ref bump. He's on the floor. So Sting, he hits the first post. But he's walking in a strange way that he's got his back to everything, so he doesn't see the ref on the floor. Hits the second post. It's the third post. The way Nick Patrick is taking his ref bump, he's draped across the rope with his legs out, with his body outstretched, so you can't walk past him. So as Sting's walking around, he decides to now turn around and walk towards the fourth rope. He falls down he trips over Nick Patrick and he misses the fourth corner. He's just like, oh shit, that sucks to be you, Sting. So then Vader decides to use his brain. He ties Sting's legs together with the strap, hog ties him, starts dragging him towards the rope. He goes towards the far one instead of the near one. Hits that one, drags Sting, hits the third one, hits the second one, hits the fourth one. He goes for the fourth one, but Sting has the ropes. He's got the ropes. He's hanging out on the ropes. Harley Race is hitting Sting's hands, trying to get Sting to let go of the rope. Sting holds on. Harley Race is still hitting that. He's just like, what the fuck can do? So Sting decides to kick out at Vader, which really should be that he's broken him holding the friggin' ropes itself should mean that he's broken the momentum and Vader has to start all over again. But for some reason now this doesn't apply this time. So Sting kicks out at Vader. Vader falls backwards and hits the fourth corner and wins. Like, fuck it. So he's won. I think it was a title match as well. He retains the title. Sting goes mental after this. Starts whipping the crap out of Vader. Vader's back's all bloody and cut up. Vader's mask comes off and Vader scarpers. The Sting's just in the ring with a strap.
How do you have an unsanctioned title match?
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense.
How does that work? It's unsanctioned. It can't be your belt.
This was WCW. Not much made sense at any point.
Wow.
It was an enjoyable match, apart from that ending. The ending spoiled it, especially the ref bump and just Sting kicking out at Vader for him to just fall back and go yoink. It's just
I really hope he made that noise as well.
but the fans ate it up, didn't they? The fans absolutely ate it up.
Yeah.
Just have like one of those matches that you just be on the edge of your seat. They don't do those matches often enough. I think there's a bit more. I know AEW did one recently. But the last time I can remember it in WWE was Eddie and JBL.
Yeah.
Those matches are primed for that edge of your seat, like it could go either way kind of thing. So yeah, it just sounds like those two guys nailed it. They knew what they were doing. They had the crowd. Like, yeah, here we go.
Oh, yeah. There was instances where there was good shows of strength. Sting hitting a German suplex on Vader, and then a DDT as well. It's just like, whoa! Really, the German suplex was like crisp, smooth as silk. So yeah, it was a decent enough match. It was just a dodgy ending that spoiled it.
Yeah, it's like John said. I suppose it's WCW. Never really. We always kind of blame, going on about WCW like 98, 99, 2000 for wacky endings, but it does seem like it was a bit of a trademark thing.
It was a trend all the way through.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I've just clocked the time.
I've got one more kind of honourable mention, Nick. One more, only because I was lucky enough to attend the Hulkamania tour in 1994. So not long after Hulk Hogan had joined WCW. That was probably early summer '94. They hastily arranged a European tour for the kind of autumn time. So I think it's about September, October when they came over to UK and Germany and all that, wherever wrestling was big, and they had like Wembley Arena, the NEC, I think the venue up in Sheffield, and one or two others. But I was lucky enough to have tickets to go and see the Hulkamania tour for WCW in Wembley Arena, and I've been there many, many times before. Normally holds a good, 10, 11, 12,000 people. It certainly wasn't a sellout. I'd say it was probably a third full at best. And besides myself and my dad, there was a lot of families with younger children. But I just want to read out the card, because knowing the kind of the people that we know today, this was the card. So it opened with Jim Duggan versus Diamond Dallas Page, nothing to shout about. Then we had a world tag team title match, pretty wonderful. So Paul Orndorff, Paul Roma versus the Sullivans, David and Kevin Sullivan. We had a world television title match, Lord Steven Regal versus Flying Brian Pillman. Yeah, tell me about it. Then we had a tag team title match, the Nasty Boys versus Stars and Stripes, so nothing to shout about there. That was Marcus Alexander Bagwell and the Patriot. Then we had a singles match. Get this one, gentlemen. Sting versus Stunning Steve Austin. That was effing amazing. The main event was Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair, with Sherry Martel in his corner. And the match that I want to talk about is Big Van Vader versus the man formerly known as the Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor, but he was going by the gimmick then as the Guardian Angel. And they kind of did this kind of gimmick change, this transformation, where he was kind of the enforcer of the underground, with all the people that would look after all the patrons on the underground, wherever. So he was the Guardian. But I love this match in particular because it's my first and only time that I've seen Vader in the flesh. We were kind of up in the gods, but like I said, there was a lot of families there, a lot of people that had probably never been to a wrestling show before. Me, as a massive Vader mark, was the only one out of the maybe 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people there screaming at the top of my voice. My dad had to kind of say, "Sit down, John. Shut up, John. Stop shouting, John." It's like for the whole 10-minute match, I was screaming, shouting, going, "What's the time? What time is it? It's Vader time!" and all that. And everybody was looking around at me. I didn't care. It was a great match. Vader absolutely killed it. There was table spots at this house show, so that was pretty cool. All the trademark moves, and of course we know that Ray Traylor, Big Boss Man, could put in a shift. He was a hell of a talent himself, so he certainly knew what he was doing. But for kind of the occasion, like I say, the fans went into it, but I was massively into it. It's probably the most I've been into a wrestling match. But knowing that I saw the great man in the flesh in what was a quite a good match between two excellent pro wrestlers, kind of it made what was an okay card. And like I say, looking back on it now, some of the names, some of the matches, you would say, "Wow, crikey!" Show me that video. Sting versus Steve Austin, and Lord Steven Regal versus Flying Brian, and Flair versus Hogan. These were matches that weren't necessarily on your TV screens, but to see them in the flesh, and then Vader versus Ray Traylor was something special. So that's my kind of personal take, awesome. My personal input on where I've seen the big man himself in the flesh, and it's probably one of my highlights as a wrestling fan for the last 30 years.
That's awesome. On the flip side, I saw WCW in '99, and that's probably one of my worst experiences. I remember seeing Norman Smiley getting whacked over the head with a rubber chicken by Terry Funk. So, it wasn't all bad. But yeah, it was just that's quality. Just like I say, those matches, man, that was unreal. Obviously, Hogan just signs. It's like, right, crap, like let's do a tour. Let's totally sell the whole Mania brand and get some money and pay for his wages.
It wasn't the success they were hoping, but I mean, I don't think WCW ever did big numbers whenever they came over, but they just capitalized on the huge fan base of wrestling fans and how hungry we were for pretty much anything over here. But I mean, you compare that to the WWF tours of the day, which were selling out left, right, and center. The WCW ones, and didn't quite, probably because of the exposure. Like I say, I think it was on Saturday afternoons and late night certain evenings, and maybe if you were lucky, you could just about make out a scrambled picture on some German channel RTL for the pay-per-views. But the exposure, and unless you were in the know or got stuff via tape traders, which is what I did back in the day, then you wouldn't be too up on what was going on with WCW back in the 90s, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's spot on. Like I say, it didn't have the backing. To be fair, though, I mean, obviously WWE sold. Uh, you could get WWE magazines in the newsagents. I never remember seeing WCW magazines in the newsagents. So I think the UK was definitely a WWF heavy friendly nation. Shall I
Oh
say?
yeah, for sure.
So Ryan, what's your any takeaways from your Vader experience? Thinking any more of the man, any less of the man? You
Not any less. Never ever really had any negative feelings towards the guy. Um, he got kind of dodgy in his later years, calling out with Ospreay and all that kind of shit. But old man shouts at cloud. Uh, as I say, I never had any negative feelings towards Vader. One of the best big men there ever was. Him, Bam Bam Bigelow as well. So
yeah,
can't go
definitely.
wrong with Vader matches. Those
That's
Vader
why.
matches that I saw there were just absolutely amazing.
That's why I had to shout out that tag team match that I watched, because you got Bam Bam and Vader together in a tag team. Bam Bam's hitting Inzagoris on Scott Steiner and stuff like that. Vader hits a forward roll senton on Rick at some point, so he literally just running towards him. It just does a front flip and lands on Rick, and it's like, oh, I've never seen Vader do a forward flip before. So the dude had it in his arsenal. Just obviously never needed to pull it out all that much. But no, I think we have. This might be the most positive spotlight episode where we've actually focused. Every match has been a good match.
Yeah, I think he was a trailblazer as well, because when I first came across Big Van Vader, I used to get all the wrestling magazines, say '92. I used to get PWI and the Insider and all, pretty much anything. They all kind of gave the same photos and the same stories. But I first came across Big Van Vader, and maybe it was PWI, and he was just doing his stuff in WCW. And for a guy of his size doing a moonsault, that just rocked my world. That rocked my world, and I thought, I got to find out more about this guy, and I did. But yeah, when I first saw kind of him in PWI back in 1992 doing that moonsault, I thought, this guy's something special, and he was, and I've been a fan ever since. I know that this is cliche to say this now, and you've mentioned Bam Bam Bigelow, but those are the two glaring omissions from the WWE Hall of Fame. Clearly, they've had their opportunities to put those two, Bam Bam and Leon, in the Hall of Fame, and they haven't done so. Makes you wonder why and when they're likely to. Yeah, I think he's an absolute legend. And even though his WWF run is tarnished, mostly by what happened in that SummerSlam match against Shawn. I think that was kind of the start of the downward turn where politics got the better of him, unfortunately. As we mentioned, when he was in there with the likes of Ken Shamrock, when he was in there with the likes of Owen Hart, and, other matches that I watched in preparation for this, he put in a great match against Mark Henry, he put in a great match against, who was it, Bradshaw, and Yokozuna, and many more. He was always there or thereabouts. He was always featured on kind of the mid card, maybe the undercard, but he was always there and thereabouts. And surprised at how long his WWF run actually lasted for, good 2.5 years. But maybe he wasn't winning championships, but he was still putting in the shift. And I think that his body was quickly, not doing what he wanted it to do compared to his WCW days. He was putting on a lot more weight, wasn't as agile, wasn't as, flexible around the ring, but still, as we've, established, still a hell of a performer. If nothing else, go and check out some awesome Vader matches, guys.
He was a character as well. He's definitely a character people know of, or they'll recognise him. Even now, even if you've never seen any of his matches, you know of him.
Yeah.
I think that speaks a lot. When you've got certain wrestlers that you could not have seen any of the matches, but you show them a picture of Vader, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I know who that guy is. I think that speaks volumes for him. So that has been Vader time, and we are. Just a sidebar as well. The Duke could cut a promo. In fairness, there's, you put a mic in front of his face in a backstage segment, and he was ready to go. He was getting fired up, and he sold a match. So, and he made you want to watch a match as well.
Yeah,
So,
another awesome tag team partner. We mentioned Bam Bam, but when he was tag team partner with Sid in WCW, I can't remember what they were called, the Towers of Doom or something like that, or the Master Blasters, or the Masters of the Power Bomb, wasn't it? The Masters of the Power Bomb they were called.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Those two, just from the visual standpoint, just
wow.
would make you want to run a mile if you saw them in a dark alley. But yeah, I mean, Sid is another one that's underrated massively in my eyes, and another one
Yeah.
that deserves to be recognised in the Hall of Fame and so much more.
Yeah, I think Sid's a very good shout. Again, I was pleasantly surprised when I did the tour through the pay-per-views of some of his matches. So there's so many people out there that I think we can go through episodically over a long period of time, hopefully. So, gentlemen, this is, I've said, just me and Ryan we will acknowledge this is probably the most positive episode we've ever done. So we'll lay the blame purely on Mick's shoulders for any negative ones in the future. So it's all Mick's fault, man. It's what happens when you mix Geordie with Welsh. It just doesn't. So apologies for any Geordie or Welsh viewers out there. John, thank you so much for joining us, dude.
My pleasure. It's been a blast.
I hope you've enjoyed it. It's just a nice chilled out talk about a good big band.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, I'd love to do it again in the future.
Definitely, dude. Well, you could. Well, we might have to get Mikkel on this one as well. But I think at some point I need to do a Flair episode for Ryan. I'm not a Flair guy. Ryan is a Flair guy, so I kind of want to do an episode to convert me. Yes, that's the thing with the T-shirt. That's what made me think. So I'm open. I'm a sponge. I will soak in the Nature Boys, goodness and air Flair and stuff. So we will get you back on for the Flair episode, definitely. Ryan, do you want to shout out your socials, and then John, do you want to shout out yours?
Just catch me on Twitter at Yardy316. I'm on Instagram as well. Still in Facebook jail, I'm afraid, for the next 13 days. Been in jail more times than I haven't this year. Good God.
Jail more times than Nick Gage. What's that about?
Fucking Gage. MDK.
Jono, do you want to
and for me, yeah, you can follow myself, Wrestling with Johners, on Twitter, at @withjohners_pod. On Instagram, just search Wrestling with Johners, and then same on Facebook, Wrestling with Johners. And we're fast approaching our 200th episode, so support the channel. And if you want to see Wrestling with Johners and Work the Left Side and over 30 awesome podcasts, go to wrestlingwithjohners.com, the home of the Johners Podcasting Network. And yeah, like I say, it's been a blast, Nick. Thank you very much for having me, and great to finally chat with you, Ryan.
You too. Been a pleasure.